Hey, I'm Dr. Pilet, and today's topic is going to be substance abuse and stress. You know, what we found is that when we try to inform people about this notion of altered states and how altered states affect your personality, they affect your behavior, you know, we have found that a lot of clients really don't understand the relationship between stress and that desire to seek relief. And whether we like it or not, the truth is that there are many legal substances as well as illegal substances that provide that altered state that tend to give the relief. Okay? So when I talk to you about substance abuse and I talk to you about stress, I want you to understand that I don't believe all stress is bad. In fact, what I believe is that some stress is good for you. Because some stress, positive stress, it gives you energy, it makes you creative, it motivates you to a level of goal accomplishment. Okay? So I want you to think about this idea, this formula I'm going to give you: demand plus interpretation plus response. Now there's where we go to stress. Okay? So the types of demands that affect us, the things that load us up, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Understand, positive stress, motivation, inspiration, goal achievement, the desire to get a college degree, the desire to pass a test. All those things are positive and they motivate us in a way that's enjoyable. But negative stress, which is fret, fearfulness, overly, if you will, thinking about something to the point that you're squirrel caging and you're caught up in the debris, you're caught up in this negative energy, that's the negative stress that we're going to talk about here. As I give you an example to show you how stress can build up a little at a time through building blocks to the point that we go into crisis. Okay? I want to let you know that I believe crisis is that point where you've lost it, that idea of overwhelm. You'll hear people say, that man went postal or that woman went postal. And we have these news media coverages of people at the post office, people that worked at the post office that had so much piled upon them that they lost a sense of reality and they did crazy things. We call that crisis, okay? So stress, being stressed. Let me give you an example of a client we had some time ago that gave me this story, allowed me to put this story here for you to understand how stress can build up. But here's how this goes. It was just a normal, Monday morning work day, and it was time to go to work, and as she walks out to her car, it's got a flat tire. Flat tire. Negative stress. Oh my God. No spare, no jack, no ability to fix it. So as it took her 2 hours to get to work, now we're at 10 o'clock, we have this notion that I have a flat tire, my car is broke, well now I'm at work. Well, when she gets to work, she works in a type of an operation that is where people can make up for you. They can fit in for you. They can cover your spot for a little while, like sales, if you will. And so when she gets to work, she's got all this negative energy. Her boss is aggravated. Her coworkers are frustrated. And so now we have the flat tire, and now I'm at work, and everybody's mad at me. Well, now I'm up to 11 o'clock when the phone rings. It's the school, and the school says, guess what? Your child has a temperature. You need to come get your child. So as she goes to her boss to talk about this, to say, you know what, I've got a problem, the boss misinterprets this as maybe just a way of trying to get out of work and looks her in the eye and says to her, what's more important, your job or your child? Well, that just torqued her. That just threw her over into what we call crisis. I can't believe my boss said this to me. I'm out of control. And so she starts throwing things around. She starts yelling profanities at people. Well, guess what? She got fired. She got fired. So now we have flat tire, late for work, baby's sick, and I'm fired. And that's what we call crisis. I'm above that line where I can't handle all this stuff. Crisis. I'm so overwhelmed and I'm so caught up in all this crap that's going on that I lose it. Well, needless to say, she has to get the tire fixed in her car. She's got the child at home, and now her stress is reduced a little bit because I've got my fellow employees that are aggravated with me. I've lost my job, but to some extent, the car is fixed. My stress is down. As the day moves on, she picks up the phone and calls a coworker to talk, to ventilate. And she's expecting the friend to say, it's okay. Things like this happen. I'm on your side. But instead, the friend says, Baloney. You're always late, and nobody believed you that your child was sick because you've done this so often. That's what really happened. Well, now she has an argument with her coworker, and she's back into that crisis line again, where the stress has mounted to such a level that she is just beyond herself. She slams down the phone, hangs up, but she had been through enough of our domestic violence anger management program that she realized what was going on, and she said, you know what? Let me just sort of take one of these loads off my back. She calls her friend, she apologizes, she says, you know what, I guess I hadn't thought of it that way. I didn't realize that, in fact, that this was a problem, and now I realize, in fact, that you're probably right. I want to make amends. And so she gets off the phone, and again, her stress level drops a little bit. The tire's fixed. She's not fighting with her friend anymore. And we call that residuals levels of stress, because as the day ends, she's still fired, she doesn't have a job, the baby's sick, but by 10 o'clock that night, when it's time to go to bed, the fever's gone, the child's okay. So what happens tomorrow? Tomorrow when she wakes up, what does she have to face? She's fired. We call that residual levels of stress. The stress of the unresolved issues of yesterday have now invaded the next day. But what I want you to know is that this example I gave you was short-term stress, which varies from moment to moment. There is long-term stress, and it does affect all of us. And I'll give you another example. We had a guy who, married his girlfriend. Married into a family business. Okay, and the girlfriend, now wife's dad, owns this wonderful business. They give him a place in management. Well, they were in the construction business. They have a lot of rental property. So the house was owned by the company, but they lived there rent-free. And the car was a company car, and it was provided. And all these wonderful things are going on with this particular job, except it's a Friday night, he's working late, and one of his ex-girlfriends comes by to say hi. His father-in-law walks in, and needless to say, word gets out, and instantly his wife is wanting a divorce. So we went from all those things working for us to, wow, I'm getting a divorce. I've lost my job, I lost my car, I lost my home, and I have to get this new life going. Well, it took him almost 3.5 weeks before he could find a new job, and it took him another 6 weeks before he was able to get a car, and it took him another 4 or 5 weeks before his finances started to be healed. These are long-term stresses. The stress of the divorce, that's not an instant thing. It goes for months. Finances, car. All of us have these long-term stresses in our life. The problem I have with stress and substance abuse is that when you have a lot of long-term stress that's caused through, if you will, dysfunctional lifestyles, it makes us more susceptible to individual things that might happen. So I've got the long-term stress of no job, no car, my bills are out, off the chart, and I'm going through a divorce. But then one little thing happens during the day at 11 o'clock, and that little thing could be an argument with a friend, or maybe your mom and your dad are get on your case because you're not working hard enough to resolve these issues. Now we go into crisis. Long-term stress makes you more susceptible to going into crisis because the moment things compile and add on. Okay? Now the problem with this is I teach you this notion of stress, is that each of you that are listening to this is so unique and so different in the way you handle stress that not all of us are susceptible to the same level. The person that is triggered by this little bitty thing because their personality, the threshold of their ability to cope is so low, is not the same as a person that has all these reserves that just isn't bothered. And so we find that as we work with clients, some people, they handle stress much differently than other people that handle stress. But I do want you to know that each of you has this artificial place within you where you can go into crisis. Now, when I ask you to look at this idea of interpretation, the demand, remember, the one I gave you before, I'm late for work, my baby's sick, etc., and then the one where I lost my job. The interpretations can be a positive interpretation, can be a negative interpretation, and sometimes to reconstruct our stress levels and our negative energy, we've got to find a way to change that glass from being half empty to half full. And an example I might give you is I had a client who recently their car caught on fire and burned. And it was something that they really enjoyed. The automobile was something that they were proud of. It was something that was sort of a token, if you will, of their life. But that in itself was a negative interpretation. I'm out of a car. My God, what am I going to do? How do I get replacement? But the positive interpretation came, well, wait a second. The insurance paid for the automobile. I got to get a newer automobile. I actually got a better deal on it. My note is less. See, what I'm trying to say is sometimes we can try to look at something that's a loss and view it in a more positive way because it might be opening new doors for me to change that I couldn't have changed otherwise. Where I see positive interpretations is the idea that I think to myself reflectively, I'm getting ahead, I'm moving up, I'm moving on, I'm winning. Life is good. I'm enjoying my life. I have feelings of well-being. I radiate a sense of positive regard to everybody around me. I'm motivated, not just for myself, but I motivate others. And then the idea that I'm helping people in positive ways. When I look at negative interpretations, that's where your self-talk, we call it squirrel caging. Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. Life really sucks. Life is not good. You know, there's only two things in life that are positive about life, and that is taxes and death. That idea that I'm sad, I'm unhappy, that I become filled with doom and gloom and depression. You know, there's this notion of despair. The idea that negative interpretations and the way that we respond in negative ways, depression, despair, they're real, they're alive, they happen every day. But also shame and guilt. You know, I like to point out to people that guilt is, I made a mistake, but shame is, I am a mistake. And when we become a shame-based person, there really is no solution, okay? So when we look at this idea of response and stress, okay, I need you to realize that this is all emotions-based. Emotions. E, energy. M for motion, energies in motion. And that when we have energies in motion, if we react, which is that instantaneous where we don't think about what we're about to do, and we say crazy things, we do stupid things, that tends to make things worse. But when we back up a little bit, regardless of the emotional energy that's hitting us, and you start to contemplate, how might I respond? When you respond, you're going to work on the solution. You're going to work on how do I clarify, how do I collect more information. When you react, you don't even give it enough time to consider these things. And I like to point out to anybody, to you that's listening to this, you always have time to react in a way that's, you know, screaming or yelling or dysfunctional. But when you take the time to process what's going on and you slow things down, typically you'll find your response will be much better for everybody concerned. So when I think about this idea and try to give you these notions